So, good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all panelists to this webinar on COVID-19 and the future of SAARC. I am Alakh Ranjan. I work as research assistant in Center for Land and Warfare Studies. It's a New Delhi-based think tank, and I'm also associated with AIDIA. So, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, whose obituary has been written a multiple of times, has somehow able to revive itself in some way or the other. This organization, which was dead from 2014, after 2014, when the SAARC summit was cancelled, again resurfaced after Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi proposed a video conference on March 13, after which a video conference was held on March 15 between the leaders of all the SAARC nations, where SAARC Emergency Fund was announced. Followed by this, on March 26th, health professional of SAARC connected through video conference, where Indian health workers shared their way in which they are dealing with this pandemic. On April 26th, SAARC health minister also came together to discuss what is the situation in their respective countries and how are they combating with it. All these developments have been watched very carefully in this region and across the world, because SAARC as an association and South Asia as a region is considered to be very crucial in the world politics. This region, which is home to 21% of the world population and home to 1/4 of the world's poorest people, the region has high trade cost and poor infrastructure in terms of health and trade. These are tough times for SAARC, as World Bank has predicted the region GDP to be between 1.8 to 2.8%. Till today, 93,656 cases have been reported, and it's been rising in all the nations rapidly. So keeping in all these facts in mind, today we will discuss that what are the challenges and opportunity for SAARC nation and SAARC and an organization to revive itself. Before beginning, I would like to introduce all the panelists. Since Ms. Nasreen has still not joined us, so going by alphabetical order, we have Nurul Islam, who is a journalist at Bangladesh Post from Bangladesh. From Bhutan, we have Khampa Tshering, CEO Bhutan NetCom. From India, we have Satyendra Tripathi, Director LokNeeti, and Megha Gupta, Director South Asia Program. From Nepal, we have Gaurab Shumsher Thapa. Is Gaurab here? Yeah. Who is President Nepal First. From Pakistan, we have Riaz A. Khokhar, Research Assistant CISS. And from Sri Lanka, we have Ruwanthi Jayasekara from INSSL. So I would like everyone to, as concept note was mailed to everyone, so you know that what are the questions we are looking to answer through this webinar. I would like everyone to stick to their time limit, which is 8 to 10 minutes, followed by which we could have a discussion of 15 minutes among ourselves, as this is a closed panel discussion. And at the end of it, what I feel that we should achieve is to basically answer that how can SAARC as an organization and this region can move forward in the post-pandemic period and at the current time. So I would like Nurul Islam to begin with his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. I would say it's a very timely initiative. So basically, I am a reporter, I'm a journalist, I cover the diplomatic affairs. So I don't have as such, presentation like the academician or researchers. So I will just make brief comments. So based on your introduction. So you said that, you rightly said, if we follow the SAARC stories in the past. So I would say this pandemic gives SAARC, I would say in this way, because we have been saying that SAARC is dead with practically no outcome in more than 30 years of its life. And in recent years, if you see the rise of BIMSTEC, that also gives us a perception that SAARC grouping will not work out. If you see the composition of BIMSTEC and SAARC, you will see that only difference, and it's a big difference. Sometimes the Pakistan is missing in BIMSTEC, while five other SAARC countries like, except Pakistan, Maldives, and Afghanistan. But again, other 5 countries are within the BIMSTEC process. But again, if you see the BIMSTEC, Myanmar is the member of the BIMSTEC process, which becomes a new problem, because if you see in 2018 August summit of BIMSTEC leaders, the Rohingya crisis was a serious challenge that time. It was at its top, but the BIMSTEC leaders, from the meeting, they did not make any statement, or they just fell short of public expectation, particularly from the Bangladesh perspective. So they did not speak anything on the Rohingya issue because Myanmar was there, Myanmar leader was there. So I think I was giving this perspective in that sense that, and if you see the composition of WHO Southeast Asia region, because it's a pandemic, WHO is very much there. So in this CRO, WHO divides the whole world in 6 categories. So in the CRO, you will see the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka, they all are members. Pakistan is in the WHO Eastern Mediterranean region. So I'm talking about I'm talking on these issues because SAARC process, the challenge was being seen as the relations between the crisis between India and Pakistan. That has been seen as the standing in the way of SAARC process. So that's why I'm just giving this background. But thankfully, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as you said, yes, he gives the new life to SAARC. He suddenly called the video conference and took the step. But again, if you see that the Pakistan seems not welcoming in that, and they were represented by the state minister or the Pakistan Prime Minister's advisor in the video conference. And if you carefully look at the speech of the state minister, you will see that they raised the contentious issues such as Kashmir. We understand that yes, there are challenges, there are problems, there are political issues, but sometimes you have to stop, you have to look in a different perspectives. And this pandemic is a serious public health issue, and we should all give it a chance to unite. And I don't know how it will happen. So, and if you see this video conference and the Prime Minister Modi, he introduced a fund, and our Prime Minister also responded very positively. I will come to this point later. So if you see, during the video conference, the leaders of the respective countries, they were raising the concerns of the economic impact, particularly if you see the Maldives, Sri Lanka, they are heavily dependent on tourism sector, and they are in serious economic crisis, particularly the Maldives. So if we are united, we could raise the collective voice on so many issues of international concerns also, because the pandemic, for example, if you see that our from Bangladesh, India, or from these countries, we send our people in Middle Eastern countries for working there, and our people are contributing for the development of the Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Arabia. But you see, it's a very bad time. It's a crisis time. But they are forcing our governments to take them back at this difficult time. So, but nobody is raising their voice. I think if we had a collective voice, then we could also raise those critical issues also. And I don't know how will the outcome will be, but I think we have to wait and see. And if you have any, do you have any specific questions to me?
If I view the concept note, so in that the question was like SAARC emergency fund has been introduced and 15 billion has been allocated. So
Okay.
do you think that amount is adequate, or there should be more that should have been allocated?
No, it's a definitely a good step forward, and it's a beginning. And I think more money will come, more collaboration will take place. And about the future, if you said see that it's difficult to predict at this stage. But one thing was very common during the video conference, that every leader speaks about the need of cooperation and collaboration. And pandemic, you understand that pandemic do not recognize political borders. So in the time of crisis, reaching out the neighboring countries is the most obvious course of action, which is I think everybody understands. And our prime minister, if you see her speech, she proposed an institution, so I think that institution to be set up for collective response to diseases, I mean public health issues. So I think this will really help if we can create such institution in this pandemic period. This will really help us to take these efforts further forward. And he said that we can tap collective expertise and resources. And by this time, you can see that India is sending testing kits to the neighbors, which are made in India, because during this time there are crises everywhere. So in Bangladesh, our doctors have their own expertise. They formulated the clinical management guidelines even before the outbreak of the disease in Bangladesh. We got first cases in March. So I think this expertise, this technical exchange can really help. And for this, so this institution under SAARC will be really helpful, because even if you follow the WHO's Director General's briefing yesterday, he said countries must be prepared for future pandemic. He categorically said that, and he said that invest now to face the next pandemic. This is important because countries like us, we have low investment in the health sector, and and if you see that it is also needed, because in recent years you said that we are talking a lot on non-communicable diseases, because and maybe we are because we are getting funds from international donors, and at the same time we are saying that we have conquered the infectious diseases. It's not a challenge anymore, but now we can see what challenges it is posing. So, and that's why I think this SAARC institution, if we can create this kind of mechanism, that will really make a difference. And this pandemic, I think, shows us that about the need of the neighbors. For example, if you consider the economic perspective, for example, the Bangladesh, we mostly sell ready-made garments to the Western market, but now we cannot sell it. But if we had any products that we could sell in our neighboring markets, that we can easily exchange through land border. So these are the things I think our policymakers will think, because this pandemic will change everything. Post-pandemic time.
Yeah. So thank you, Nurul. Now I would ask Khampa Tshering to talk about the situation in Bhutan and about the overall situation and how the SAARC can be revived. His views on it. Khampa?
Okay. Thank you, Alakh. Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me?
We can.
We can hear you.
Okay. It is such an honor to be among the esteemed panelists today from across the SAARC countries. I'm very fortunate to be part of this webinar. Thank you, AIDIA, for having me. I will directly try to answer all the questions that were given to us as a background to our discussion today. So let me start with a Bhutanese proverb. It goes like this: Dimomli rimdo, chumomli yua. I hope all the panelists understood this.
No.
No.
Well, just kidding. Okay, so let me just translate this Bhutanese proverb. Okay, so it simply means that you have to perform the rituals before you are afflicted with the sickness, or you have to build the drain before the water comes. Okay? So, it is the Bhutanese way of saying a very popular proverb, which is prevention is better than cure. So, as an entrepreneur and now whenever I need to source anything for my clients or business that I'm managing. So at a personal level, I feel emotionally and professionally attached to this SAARC region. I have more friends and clients in the region than in any part of the world. So I hope the feeling of fellows in SAARC countries are also likewise. So during my participation in regional meetings, points raised or that I have heard is that South Asia is the most culturally diverse and populated region in the world. Yet, we are the least connected. The problem is not only with physical connection through road, air, and waterways, but also connection with people and cultures. So COVID-19 came as a common pandemic threat to all of us, so dragging us to the brink of extreme crisis of survival. The lives of millions of workers, especially the daily wage workers in our region, are on the line. Coronavirus came as a disease which can instantly kill. That has awakened our hitherto negligence on outdated socioeconomic structures in the region. So COVID-19 has unleashed all kinds of socioeconomic crises we could possibly imagine. But the question is, did we have well-organized intra-regional systems which were pandemic-proof? I suppose no. It took us a disease to tell us how vulnerable we were prior to this. So my argument today, however, is not to expose the weakness of our regional systems, but rather capitalize on them. We have all the possible resources in our SAARC region. Talk about human resources. We have the best scientists and scholars in the world. Talk about leaders. The region is home to some of the far-sighted and enlightened leaders like Gautama Buddha or Mahatma Gandhi and many more. Talk about market. We don't need any bigger than the one we have now. Bhutan is the smallest of all the SAARC countries, and our population of less than 1 million people will be the first ones to be wiped out if the pandemic went out of control. Even if not by the disease, then certainly by hunger, if the lockdowns were to continue indefinitely for months and years. Luckily, we're getting the full support from the Indian government to get essential supplies during the COVID-19 crisis. And moreover, our king has been so selfless to be on the front line to tackle the impacts of the pandemic on our country. SAARC region will need greater collaboration and connection if we are to remain resilient to any pandemic or social economic crisis. Let's talk in real terms. I mean, in reality, what I'm trying to say is we need a regional system designed in such a way that SAARC medical scientists or doctors can work seamlessly across the regional labs to discover the vaccine for any pandemic, not just the COVID-19. And we can do this possibly because of our integrated healthcare system. And we also need a system where I, as a Bhutanese, can still continue to do business seamlessly across our region, given our well-integrated economic system. But that is not the reality today. Bhutanese cannot buy online from popular e-commerce sites like in India, Bangladesh, or Nepal. Nor can others buy from Bhutanese online stores. There's this whole lot of complicated socioeconomic barriers for transactions and trade. So our regional policies and initiatives should not be reactive. Rather, I suggest it should be proactive. And we have all the possibilities in front of us. I mean, look at this webinar. You know, I could have never here today unless an organization like AIDIA could connect us together, share our thoughts, and then, you know, think of the possibilities of bringing this region together. So I feel that, you know, we have talked enough. Like we have had BIMSTEC, like somebody said, you know, earlier, you know, Nurul from Bangladesh. We have BBIN, and then we have SAARC, and we have a lot of theories, you know, as to how the people in this region can come together and do things together. But now it's high time we look into the practicalities of, you know, realizing these theories and models that we have proposed. So I believe that SAARC is still possible, and we were very happy to see Shri Narendra Modi ji trying to bring the SAARC leaders together and then form this emergency COVID-19 fund. And it was a huge relief for a small country like Bhutan. As I said before, you know, we are a very small country. So if we don't take precautionary measures, preventive measures, then, you know, we will be at the risk of the total annihilation, if you like. So for a small country like Bhutan, we would very much like to have a friendly relation with our neighbors like Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and with other members of the SAARC like Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Pakistan. So I want to reiterate and stress on the need of regional collaboration, not just between the governments, you know, but also between the businesses. Like, for example, now I am in the business of media, you know, especially the broadcast media. So the kind of a collaboration that I'm talking about is that while doing the business of broadcast media, I would very much like to be familiar and know the stakeholders of the broadcast media, not just in my country, but also in the SAARC region, you know, because we have to, when we do business, we have to rely on a lot of resources, like human resources and other material resources. So if we have access to these kind of resources in the region, then I'll be, you know, it will be very convenient for me to do a very good business. And I don't have to rely on materials being sourced from the other parts of the world, which I'm not very familiar with. For me, it's very you know, comfortable and convenient to go to India, you know, and then like be familiar with the people, because we are very close to each other and we share certain similarities in our culture, you know. So I mean, I feel very comfortable going to India, talk Hindi, you know, with people down there, do good business with them, rather than look somewhere else. You know, the places which are not familiar to me. So I would like to conclude my, you know, my discussion by saying that we need to encourage and look at the possibilities of bringing the businesses and people together. Our governments have already talked too much. We have a lot of theories and models being proposed and developed and discussed in so many conferences and seminars. But now it's high time we implement these models for the people to believe that yes, regional integration is possible. Culture to culture contact is possible, and that way, I believe, a model like SAARC can be revived again, and then we can build a very good, resilient region, which no pandemic or no crisis can destroy us.
Thank you, Khampa, for a detailed discussion, and you made a very good point, like integrating business and collaboration of business, which is very much needed, and I think that would be needed. We'll talk about it after the whole presentation is done. Now, I would like Satyendra Tripathi, who is the director of LokNeeti, to start with his presentation. Sir, Satyendra, unmute it. Yeah, sir. Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Namaskar to everyone. Thank you for giving me opportunity to be here in this webinar on future of SAARC. So I will try to go through only focused on SAARC and future of the SAARC. When the Indian government under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi came into the picture of center in India, they had started with his idea of Panchasheel, the foreign policy, the draft for looking after its neighbor. They went with the 5 yes, which is called Samvad, Suraksha, Sanskriti, and Samman. So these 5 pillars to reunite the whole region with their own civilizational linkages, which fall ages since ages, they have their own linkages with the different countries. At the same time, India tried a lot to be with their neighbors in different way. But in this present context, the COVID-19, we have seen that there's the multi word order is going to be changed. So in the new world order, there may be there's a possibility of that the more organizations or more relations will move towards one-to-one or single polar rather than multipolar. For India into the SAARC has shown its commitment, and the Prime Minister has called to respond to this COVID-19 challenge, pandemic challenge. And he called for a meeting, as other panelists have said very well, that he allocated some funds and spoke to the leaders of different countries in the region. So, but at the same time, India has asserted its commitment towards the SAARC nations. Like if we go with the Nepal, the India has sent around 32 tons of medicines, the necessary medicines. Then in Maldives, India has done since 2014. These are different like in 2014 they went with the Maitri, Neer, and right now in Sanjeevani operations, which help the regions very well and serve the nation in larger point. So the bigger question is why this regional the cooperation is getting affected. And somebody has very rightly said in the starting that there's one country which has always the issues in this in this whole regional outfit. So if we see in the term of Bangladesh, India has extended the support to provide the toolkits and as well as the supporting gears, which is PPEs. So in the larger way, if we see, it's more more one single polar, right? It's more is one-to-one communications, and in that way, it's very it went very well. Either it's Bhutan or Nepal, it's Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or Maldives. But in the case of Pakistan, there's always have been issues which need to be addressed at the larger point. If we need to look the SAARC as a one of the remaining ideas. Somebody has said very well that the SAARC has lost its relevance back years, and again it got some kind of catalyst uh, in the challenge of COVID-19. So we need to understand this first. If we want really the future of SAARC, we have to work together. We have to understand the concerns of each and every nation, who are the part of this bigger network. And then there's a different dynamics also is coming into the picture. If we see in case of BBIN, this Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal coordination. They have signed the agreement in the past for good moves, economic sub-regional grouping and uh, willing of writing this, signing this agreement on movement of goods into their region. And then there's a BIMSTEC came into the picture. BIMSTEC had signed the agreement of energy sector. Then there's a road connectivity. The connectivity. Making this possible, faster rather than going with the SAARC nations. So there's a question. The big question is that how we are, seeing each other. If we really want to make our points that this regional framework has to work properly, then we have to understand and address the concerns of each and every nation. At the question of economic development, yes, definitely, I believe that we need better cooperation. We need better frameworks to engage economically to all our nations. But at the same time, the COVID also has tell us that we need to develop a new economic models, which may be not, very much relevant to the GDP, but more in happiness indexes like Bhutan have. And again, I will reiterate that each and every nation needs their own economic models. Like India have its own economic model in the past, that India was more focused on villages. So we need to channelize those models again and work for their own nations. At the same time, we need our own frameworks to design the economic benefit of each and every country at single point rather than larger regional corporations. But yes, there's a larger cooperation will be happening, like BBIN may be going to be one of the key factor in dealing with the regional connect and economic prosperity of these nations: India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal. And BIMSTEC, definitely there's a concern over Myanmar, but I feel like because most of the population lies into that, and around 2.5 trillion dollar economy is in BIMSTEC. So it will be new game changer for economic prospect, if you take my points. And then definitely the terrorism always has been center point of all development. But in the present context in COVID, if you see the response of different countries, who are the part of this SAARC nation. So you can assume that how serious we are, and how serious we are to collaborate and institutionalize that this challenge into the particular institution. So if there is any other question, please let me know.
Yeah, thank you, Satyendra. You also made important point, like now new economic models need to be keep in place, which need to be country specific at one and also with vis-a-vis with the region also, which is a very important point. Like we had our village economies in the past, and which was a very sustainable model also. But and at the same time, we need to focus on integrating the region also, like you talked about BBI and other initiative which the government has taken. So thank you for the presentation. We'll come back and raise other questions. I have some questions which I will end after the raise after all I have presented. So now I would like Megha to present. Megha, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi. So thank you for having me in the seminar. And I think it's a very good time to be discussing SAARC because we're on our 35 years. So, and plus this pandemic has given us a good chance to just sit and reflect on what we've done these 35 years and what should be done later. So in my present, I would mostly like to focus on the opportunities that SAARC should adopt or just perform post the pandemic era. So one thing is that South Asia needs to start looking at how it should become the technological hub. We have the emerging technologies coming up. We have AI, we have blockchain, but we do not have an understanding of the technology. So we need to have government-to-government cooperation on what should be the understanding, how should we have research institutes or research and development focused on technological development. So that is one important area to be focused on. And also like how we see Europe has technological offices stationed in universities, we should also have some sort of provision for South Asian University or either SAARC universities or private and public universities to have technological innovations being developed. Second, I would like to focus on a migration. We've seen it's been an issue prevailing across all over South Asia, may it be India, Nepal, or Maldives. So in 2014, when we had the SAARC summit in Kathmandu, we did have a SAARC declaration, which said that we should have a collective action on migration, but then nothing took place. So we need to start focusing and just developing how should we collectively manage the migration issue. Third, I would like to focus is on poverty and inequality. It is prevailing all across South Asia, and World Bank has said that 65 million people are going to be below poverty line in a couple of years. That is by 2030 was their prediction. So we need to start developing mechanisms or just provisions of coming together, like Khampa said, not just government to government, but also civil society, businesses, other stakeholders that can come together and look into these issues. And it's a common issue that's prevailing all across South Asia. So we need to sort it out together. Fourth, I would like to focus on, so there's another thing that was on till 2010, but then SAARC stopped it. That is SAARC Youth Award, which was a very novel initiative of awarding a youth for bringing something about in their own country, which is a good innovation that can span across all of South Asia, and it has stopped. So that there needs to be a revival of that sort of initiative. Also, like we're doing how West no longer, like they're not being able to cope up with this pandemic, nor are they any longer focusing on their foreign policy. So it is kind of the Asian century, and we are in South Asia. And now West is looking at South Asia. We cannot ignore that. So we need to come. So leaving the bilateral issues aside, like India-Pakistan issue, that is a bilateral problem. We need to understand that. We cannot let that come in the region. Leave that aside, but focus on SAARC. So SAARC has to be the focus. Like a couple of speakers did mention that, yes, there is BBI and there's BIMSTEC that's been taking the new discussion point, but apart from these organizations, we cannot let go of SAARC. It is, for instance, like the saying goes, like we can't be throwing stones at our neighbors if our own window is made of glass, right? So we need to start cooperating, regionally integrating, come together and solve issues. And so the focus has to be SAARC. And like one of the discussants said that BIMSTEC has the problem of Rohingya Muslims, which cannot be highlighted. Apart from that, if you look at the kind of Chinese influence that's there in Myanmar, it's something that we, despite being focusing on BIMSTEC, will not be able to cope up with it. For instance, the Chinese project on Kyak Phu port, which comes down to the Indian Ocean, or the Myatson Dam, or the Letpadong Dam, or the presence of Chinese diaspora in Myanmar, or take into account of the Chinese influence on ceasefire dialogues, it's quite a lot. So China will have a dominant hold over Thailand and Myanmar. So leave BIMSTEC aside, focus on SAARC. We cannot ignore that. Yes, that's it.
Thank you, Meghna, for your presentation.
Yeah,
so
sure.
you made good points about technological development and integration, and setting up the technological innovation center in different universities across SAARC. I think that technology will play a very important role in the coming days, whether it's pandemic or the aid to economy. So technology will play an important role, and thank you for making this point. Now I would like to invite Gaurab Shumsher Thapa, who is from Nepal, President Nepal First, to begin with his presentation.
Thank you, Alakh. I would like to thank AIDIA for providing me an opportunity to speak on a very pertinent topic. And as you have all mentioned, that SAARC is a very diverse, although it's culturally a very diverse region, but we all are, somehow we feel connected to each other. Due to the cultural affinity, we somehow seem to be very culturally, we find affinity among ourselves. But the biggest problem so far, which I've seen in terms of SAARC's performance, is it is more policy oriented rather than action oriented. A lot of policies are made and a lot of summits take place, but the actions, in terms of real actions and outcomes, is very less or negligible. Just to give you an example, for example, the tackling this disasters, there's one center, which is a disaster management center under the SAARC. But still, this could have been made into a big institution and with all the facilities. But as we see it, is not performing to that level. And the gesture of Indian Prime Minister Modi in trying to set up a COVID fund was a good initiative in the quest to revive SAARC's objectives. And if you talk about Nepal, the current case of Nepal's situation is that there have so far been 99 deaths, and 99 cases but 0 deaths. So in that case, what this pandemic has taught us is that human security is the
I think we have lost him. Is he here? I think we have lost him. Okay, till he comes, I will ask Riaz to begin with his presentation. Riaz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm just going to start it. I've made a presentation actually. Let me share this screen.
Wait, he's coming back, I think. Riaz, wait for a minute. I think he's coming back. We lost him due to the internet.
Okay.
Sorry, the internet was very unstable.
Yeah. Continue. Continue.
Okay. So the internet seems to be a bit of issue at my side right now.
No issue, sir. Continue.
Yeah. So as I was saying that this pandemic has proven that human security is one of the biggest things that needs to be taken care of. And as per the questions, the post-lockdown opportunities and challenges. The biggest challenge at the moment seems to be the reducing the spread of the virus itself. So in that case, and the next comes the economy. So, and as for example, India with its one of the best research facilities in the healthcare sector. So we could get the best practice. We could learn the best practices from a country like India, which has a lot of experience in research, and it could pass that on to other countries. For example, even in this post-disaster or post-epidemiological things also. And another biggest challenge I see through this pandemic for the SAARC region will be to maintain the supply chain after the post-pandemic. So it'll be one of the biggest challenges because most of the industries have been closed, and even when they start making reopening, that's going to be a big challenge. And other challenge for the region, I think, with all the very poor health facilities, will be coping with a second wave of pandemic if it occurs. So that's also going to be a big challenge for the region. And in terms of opportunities, I think the very concept of regionalism, this pandemic has shown that we as a region and we as countries need to fight this thing collectively. So I think it will try to instill a sense of collective effort in the efforts to tackle the things. And I think another opportunity for this SAARC region, which has one of the biggest markets in the world in terms of population, I think a lot of MNCs might pull their investments away from China. So, and the SAARC region, I think it has a scope to start lure those MNCs into their territories. So I think that's one of the major opportunities. And another thing was whether this will integrate or isolate the economies. So I think in terms of economic thing, I believe that it will lead to integration rather than isolation, because I don't think the countries are in a position to adopt protectionist measures in this globalized world. So I think the regionalism will bear fruit, and the countries will adopt integrative methods rather than protective methods. And another pertinent question was, will integration of economy and healthcare sectors play a role in revival of SAARC? I think yes, because the essence of cooperation relies on peace. And I think unless there is peace in the region, development cannot take place. And so I think, in my opinion, this crisis will provide a lot of opportunity in terms of regional integration, in terms of economic cooperation in the days ahead. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gaurab. You also made interesting point about human security, and that regionalism is the way forward, especially for the SAARC region. Although some places in the world, other regions are vouching for protectionism, but regionalism is the answer to the problem in the SAARC region. And I totally agree with it that regionalism will play a very important role in the coming days as far as SAARC is concerned. So thank you for making your points. So now I would like to invite Riaz, who is research assistant with CISS, Islamabad. Riaz, you can begin with your
Hello everyone. Thank you, Alakh, for providing me with this opportunity and creating this very good Zoom get together with every one of us. It was really an intellectually stimulating discussion, and I've noted so many good important points and that I will try to implement or incorporate in my presentation. I've written this in my paper, so I will just read it for you because I don't want to waste anyone's time. So SAARC had been dysfunctional for the largest period ever since its establishment in 1985. Although the postponement and cancellation of SAARC summits have happened before, this time it took South Asian heads of government nearly 6 years to sit together under a common platform. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi took the charge and convened a virtual SAARC conference over the COVID-19 crisis. An emergency fund was created to support each other in battling this pandemic. First, here comes the question of emergency fund, its adequacy and utilization. The COVID-19 emergency fund aims at helping one another in South Asia to tackle the pandemic. All countries in the regional bloc have announced their pledges for the fund, the total amount of which amounts to $21.8 million. SAARC can use this fund in several ways, developing an efficient healthcare system, as people here have mentioned. I mean, Gaurab mentioned this integration of health and economy, for example, and intra-regional information dissemination and national and social awareness campaigns, buying technology and testing kits, and so on. One of the important ways that I consider are, however, might be to save the money until the vaccine against this coronavirus is developed. Use the amount then to buy the vaccine in a bulk amount and distribute and deploy among the SAARC countries. Doing so would reduce the cost of the vaccines. Otherwise, a poor country might not afford to buy them on its own. It makes sense because countries have already been investing money for relief packages, including subsidized grocery sales, cash grants, food supplies for the most vulnerable class. As a case in point, Gates Foundation and TikTok have donated a combined $20 million to Gavi, a vaccine alliance in Africa, for the same purpose. Now coming to the post-lockdown opportunities and challenges for SAARC. Actually, I'm following the questions that Alakh had sent to us in email. So about the opportunities, intra-regional supply chains. The question that arises out of the World Bank's negative economic forecast for 2 years for South Asia is this: would this be a case if South Asia had greater intra-regional trade? Also, will disruptions in global supply chain prompt countries to pursue trade intra-regionally or even sub-regionally? I think Satyendra mentioned this point. He was talking about village economies, and he was talking about the changed global economic system. And countries around the world may re-evaluate their over-reliance on global supply chains and look intra-regionally. Intra-regional and sub-regional supply chains would help achieve economies of scale through strengthening links between low-cost producer countries or provinces. The intra-regional supply chains could well be resilient and invulnerable to the disruptions caused by such issues as the pandemic or security crisis outside the region. By doing so, the South Asian intra-regional trade would amount to $67 billion instead of the current $23 billion. Now, sub-regional SAARC. As per the gravity model, regional trade is inversely proportionate to the distance between two provinces or countries. For instance, Bangladesh products may be more competitive due to lower transportation costs to the bordering states of India than to the distant ones. Perhaps this was the idea behind South Asian sub-regional economic cooperation of India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. Sri Lanka's exports would find better traction in India's southern states than India's north and the west. In contrast, Pakistan's trade with Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan, and India's trade with Afghanistan and Iran through long sea routes would incur more transportation costs and time duration than through their mutual border with each other. Sub-regional SAARC may not suit Pakistan's interests because Islamabad is disconnected from these northeastern neighbors, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan, by large India in between. And with India, it allows only 138 items to be imported through Wagah-Attari border. Pursuing sub-regional cooperation won't be meaningful for the country unless the transit of commodities resumes through India. Coming to the challenges. First of all, if the above mentioned opportunities do not materialize, they would constitute challenges to address. And there are historical persistent hurdles in regional integration, on top of which comes mistrust. And it's not just about India, Pakistan. Trust is in short supply among other South Asian countries as well. If it was only about Pakistan, other regional initiatives such as BIMSTEC would have performed well. It was established in 1997 to connect South Asia with Southeast Asia, and it represents 21% of the global population. Still, intra-regional trade is reportedly so negligible that it is not even documented. Another challenge is political conflict with one another. Almost every country has a conflict with another country or a set of countries stemming from a territory, identity, or ethnicity, and their relationship with the outside powers. New Delhi's relations with Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are hamstrung by its domestic politics. For instance, West Bengal's politics over immigrants from Bangladesh, which the Citizenship Amendment may further instigate, and water resources such as Teesta River issue, and Tamil Nadu's identity politics with Sri Lanka. Similarly, India-Pakistan relations have remained hostage to the Kashmir issue, which has exacerbated since New Delhi revoked its special constitutional status and enforced mass lockdown and communication blackout. And this was largely the reason behind Islamabad's hesitant participation in Modi-led SAARC conference initiative. Lastly, India refuses to participate in Pakistan-hosted SAARC summit or cricket matches because of the persistent issue of terrorism allegedly originating from within Pakistan. Another challenge is tariff and non-tariff barriers. According to a 2018 World Bank report, most of the South Asian countries trade with the outside world on better terms than with one another. They have more import protectionist barriers within the region than without. New Delhi has put in place 9 times more import barriers for South Asia than for the rest of the world. And Islamabad has 6 times more trade barriers within than outside the region. Another challenge is strict visa regimes. Now, I was listening to a maybe Bangladeshi, no, a Sri Lankan maybe NGO guy, and he was saying I was applying for a visa to, if I apply for a visa to US, I get 5 years visa. If I apply for a visa to UK, I get 2 years visa. But if I apply for a visa to Bangladesh, I get a visa for 3 months. Are you listening to me? Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you.
Okay. So strict visa regimes reduce the flow of tourists, foreign direct investment, and education, medical, and financial services intra-regionally. Now coming to the question of what lies ahead, integration or isolation. Now in 2014, after not so successful Kathmandu conference, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi reportedly said that South Asian region should move forward with or without all of the SAARC members. Bonds will grow through SAARC or outside it, he vowed. Since then, he has been pursuing a policy of neighborhood first, under which he has sought to expand investments in regional countries on both bilateral and multilateral basis, except with Pakistan. One element of India's neighborhood first policy might be to disentangle itself of South Asian political troubles and instead grow strong enough independently to compete with China in the region. The recent, towards this, I think Megha pointed to this factor that China has a great influence in this region, and I think neighborhood first policy might be India's effort to compete with China and offer its regional neighbors an alternative, economic, technological, and military alternative to China. The recent policies of strong nationalism and assertiveness in the region may be a reflection of India's self-belief as a more powerful country economically, technologically, and militarily. Since Islamabad has withdrawn from competing with New Delhi in strengthening relations with other South Asian states, it is natural for New Delhi to compete with Beijing instead. Now, another challenge is SAARC -1, and it became noticeable when India pulled out of the 2016 SAARC Summit of Heads of Governments to be held in Islamabad, citing the terrorism concerns. Unfortunately for Pakistan, other countries also followed India's suit. New Delhi appeared determined to isolate Pakistan in South Asia. While New Delhi was doing that, Islamabad didn't try harder either to strengthen relations with other South Asian states. Islamabad instead started looking outwards toward China, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Malaysia, and this trend has been continuing to date. Another challenge is the future of SAARC and integration. This is not a challenge, it's just a point. Future of SAARC integration, for the revival of SAARC in letter and spirit, this is perhaps the right time. South Asian states need to work on opportunities described in this presentation and make concerted efforts to overcome the long-standing challenges of mistrust, trade barriers, and political conflicts. If these historical challenges have obstructed regional trade, the increasing regional trade and the facilitated flow of goods and services will create regional interdependencies, which in turn will help countries overcome these obstacles and become integrated economically. At a time when global supply chains are disrupted, regional and sub-regional supply chains will help South Asian states achieve progressive economic growth and stability. My presentation stops here, but I would like to reiterate these points what Megha mentioned about this creating a technological hub and blockchain technology and research institutes in South Asia. I think this is a very important point, and I missed it in my presentation. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Riaz, for a very detailed presentation. You made very important point about sub-regional supply chains, which need to be developed so that it is resilient to the global disorder or disruption. So, which is a very important point. And you also mentioned about the trade barrier, like 6 times more trade barrier, which Islamabad applies in South Asia and than to other places, and 9 times about India. So these were very important statistics which you made. So now I would like Ruwanthi Jayasekara from Sri Lanka to start with the presentation.
Hello. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this webinar. So I'll first give you like a background information to the context, the current context of Sri Lanka. So our first case was identified on 11th March, the first Sri Lankan case. And since then we have had 797 cases with 9 deaths and 232 people have been recovered. So, but if you look at this situation with and when you try to compare it with the regional context or the global context, what is probable is that, visible is that we've been able to flatten the curve. And even Sri Lanka, even though it's a middle-income developing country, we've been able to battle against the pandemic, whereas some major powers and superpowers have failed in this. So I believe that when it comes to this situation, even Sri Lanka has been stronger in battling the pandemic than most of the major and developed countries. Therefore, countries like this could be like, we could learn best practices from each other, and this could be concerned when it comes to taking decisions regarding SAARC nations. And also, I believe this COVID-19 is a test of humanity, where Sri Lanka has passed with no discrimination and also zero tolerance of deaths. If I speak about the COVID-19 situation and SAARC, since the establishment in 1985, the concern on health and population has been in discussion. This is one of the areas out of 5 areas of cooperation since the beginning. But everyone's well aware that SAARC was hibernating. So what I would like to tell here is that SAARC was cooped up, confined, and also SAARC was in a lockdown way before the whole world decided to go for a lockdown. So this initiative by Prime Minister Narendra Modi should be applauded by everyone else. And in order to revive SAARC, we need to revive the perspectives. Therefore, I believe that we need to look at SAARC as a window of opportunity than looking at it as another economic entanglement or another burden. Therefore, this is the sole base that we as Sri Lankans donated 5 million to the emergency SAARC fund. At a moment, we have not yet received any foreign financial aid. However, what's more important is that in our national COVID fund, we've surpassed 878 million from the local donors. So what matters here is not the number, it's not the 15 million, but the effort that the South Asian leaders have taken to revive the institute at a moment like this. However, there are some challenges that I do see, and one of this is that there's a trend of a deglobalized world. No matter how hard each of the nations or the leaders try to push towards multilateralism, this COVID-19 situation has forced us to look at self-sufficiency and self-reliancy. Therefore, even though self-sufficiency was the last resort for most of the countries, however, I do see self-sufficiency as one of the opportunities that came out of a deglobalized world, even though this could be a challenge to regional organizations. Therefore, SAARC nations are very agricultural based, and they have good cultivated lands, and promoting and incentivizing the agricultural sector and agricultural products would create more opportunities for all the nation, like the SAARC region. However, another issue that will come into play along with the agricultural products is the issue of sharing water. Therefore, as just like you pay attention towards incentivizing on agricultural products, it is necessary to pay attention on existing water disputes, and if needed, reforming or revitalizing the existing water treaties like Indus and Ganges. And also, I do see another challenge that I see currently is the economic instability. And according to the economists, the recent reports, they have identified emerging economies, and Sri Lanka ranks 61 in the emerging economic market, whereas Bangladesh ranks number 9, India 18th, and Pakistan 43rd in rank. Therefore, we see that emerging economic instability had led us towards loss of hope towards emerging economies, issues towards it. And one of the main issues for this is the issue of poverty, because this was on debate in all South Asian countries, whether more people would die of hunger than COVID. Therefore, it was necessary that the South SAARC region and the countries pay attention towards poverty alleviation. And this is where, because we had high numbers of informal sector workers and non-agricultural workers. And I appreciate how the SAARC nations have focused more on stimulus packages to the most in need. However, like it was mentioned by another discussant, this economic stability would definitely lead towards a relative deprivation, which will not just stop there, but also which lead to, with the loss of job opportunities and employment, will lead towards more trends of more possibility of radicalization and extremism in the region. This is just to keep in mind that SAARC, like South Asia, has become one of those breeding grounds for terrorism and extremism. And therefore, it is necessary that SAARC as a nation, as a regional organization, pay more attention not just to economic instability, but also indirect impact of it, such as radicalization and extremism in the region. And also, I believe that non-traditional security issues such as COVID-19 has made us realize how grave the situation could be, challenging the national security apparatus of the whole world. Therefore, I believe that, like, this is very common in all South Asian countries, where we have allocated more budget for defense than the health sector. Therefore, I believe that there is a need for reprioritization of budget allocation in health sector. And also, Sri Lanka is famous for Ayurvedic traditional medicine, and this could be applied in the case of India as well. So these Ayurvedic traditional medicine, just like we act on the Western, like we taking care of the Western medicine, we could promote what we do, what we possess in the moment, that is the traditional Ayurvedic medicine. And this could be a window of opportunity where we could focus on medicine diplomacy in a way that we could attract more tourists in the long run, after like post-lockdown period. In the long run, it could be next year or like in years to come, but this could be a window of opportunity. And what is important right now is the SAARC nations, the leaders, deciding to continue more and more dialogue, which would create trust among the nations. Multilateralism like this would be a good platform to collaborate with each other despite different ideas and politics. Therefore, I would like to mention that integration does not mean no self-sufficiency, because if you look at the situation earlier, we as a nation was less self-sufficient and also at the same time less integrated. But now this is an opportunity for us to be more self-sufficient and also be better integrated as a nation, as a regional organization. And I believe, At last but not least, what I would like to mention is that COVID-19 is like a wake-up call for SAARC. And what you have to keep in mind is it is a window of opportunity, and it should not be looked at another economic burden or an entanglement. And it is time that SAARC no more become cooped up, confined, or locked down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruwanthi, for your presentation. All of you made a very important point. So, as this is a question answer session, before I asking question to several speakers, if any of you have a question to any of the speakers, that could be addressed, and the time for the answer will be 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. Okay, so is anyone from the panel has a question for any other panelist? You can go ahead right now. Does anyone has question for other panelists?
I had a doubt. Just a second. So one of the panelists mentioned something like new economic borders or new economic. Yeah, I think it was Satyendra. Can you elaborate on what does he mean by new economic borders?
Yeah, actually, Megha,
Yeah.
I was talking about new economic models, not borders.
Oh, okay.
We must have new models. Like India
Okay.
have its own economic model, but right now to compete with the nations, somebody has talked about the China. But if you go through the recent articles published in the various papers across the world, India is producing second largest PPE kits, as well as the testing kits as well, which is a cost effective and usable. So these models are based on how to compete with the market. But my concern is far from that. My concern is that how we going to be sustain this economic models after this COVID, because we each and every country has seen the longest lockdown, 2 months, 3 months, and we don't know where we are going right now. So in that condition, what will be the better economic model for their own countries?
Okay.
We have to look into that matter. Like very well, Sri Lankan's counterpart has said very well that they have very good soft power in Ayurvedic sector. They have very good power in different others. So we need to explore those areas, and we have to work into that direction. And then we have to find out the solution for collaborating those. And that's why I said keep at the larger point, SAARC will be remain, but at the larger point we have to look more into the mutual understanding, mutual bondings, and mutual bilaterals rather than multipolar, because it will happen, and it will happen not right now, but it will happen with the time. Because if you see across the world, the China has provided the PP kits across the world, but most of them has complained about the quality of the PPE kits they got from the China. So there is a credibility issue, and that will remain. It will remain if the Tanzanian Prime Minister, the President, has cancelled the the loan given by the China to the Tanzania development, and many many African countries has done the same. And same concern has been done, raised by the Maldivian president in the past as well, that China is trying to colonize. Recently, with the China's movement in South China Sea, the Philippines has raised a big question because during the even Philippines as well. So these are the concerns have been raised, during this COVID time. So there will be credibility issue. So we need some different kind of approach which make our mutual relations better and better understanding. We need to address the concerns. It may be economic, it may be socio-economic, it may be different parameters, public health, but at the same time, we like Sri Lankan counterpart has said, the terrorism is always in the center of each and every model of economic development. We cannot ignore this. So whoever the party the party has to understand this and need to address this if we want larger, achieve the larger goal, and we need to go together.
Thank you, Satyendra. Anyone else who has question for any other panelist? So I would seek to answer. Anyone can give the answer to this question. This region, the South Asian region, is very much has been battling traditional security challenges since long, and terrorism has been one of it. And that is the reason why defense budget allocation in all the nations of the South Asia, especially India and Pakistan, are among the highest in terms of GDP share to the defense budget. So, and now this situation like this pandemic has emerged, and now non-traditional security has also got back its focus. So what should be the way forward? Can SAARC can SAARC as an association can give the answer that how to go about it, battling both traditional and non-traditional security issue? So anyone of you can answer. That how to go about it. Like, we have both traditional and non-traditional security challenges, and we have limited amount of money. So how to go about it? What will be the way forward? Will regionalism and better regional integration will be the way forward?
Yeah, Syam, actually, we need to understand first, there's a two security concerns always. One is traditional concerns, which have been raised, on the various forums. And another is the non-conventional challenges, which has been, as a public health, you can see right now in the present context, or in the terms of climate change, which is, most of the countries in SAARC also facing the same challenge. We need to address that, and we have this, we came with some kind of framework and institutionalize those, trying to institutionalize with the regional, this disaster management system and all. But at the same time, what I continuously am trying to address, trying to highlight that we need to understand this relevance of this body always lies into that how collectively we are data, how collectively sharing our intelligence, how collectively we are working together with the government to government and appreciating their efforts. So these will be always remain the same. And yeah, definitely there's a fund allocations has been done in the past as well, and different countries has been highlighting this and reacting on that. Like India has done in past, either in the case of Sri Lanka 2017, or in case of Maldives 2014, and then in Bangladesh as well. So these are more likely to be grown on mutual understanding. But if we want really to make this regional cooperation relevant and in the present context of non-conventional security challenge, we need to understand and collaborate together and address the larger issues, which is trying to hibernate this whole process.
Thank you very much, Satyendra. Now at last I would like to conclude. Ruwanthi, you want to say something?
All right. So when allocating money specifically, you cannot forget about the traditional security measures, because even if you look at the recent global terrorism index, Afghanistan ranks 1, and also and also the rest of the countries in the region. Therefore, what you have to do is we need to reprioritize our budget allocations. We have to look at the weak systems. And then these situations like COVID-19 make us wake up to the existing weak systems. And this was very nicely said by one of the Sri Lankan experts. Therefore, we have opened up, we have realized that the existing system is weak. And it is time that we reprioritize the budget allocation. But this does not mean that you need to forget the traditional security issues. and go towards non-traditional security issues. But what is necessary is, in order to understand the upcoming trends and patterns, we need to ensure that each and every country engages in a foresight analysis. And I think that is one of the major mechanisms that our region could implement on when it comes to traditional security threats or non-traditional security threats.
Thank you. Nurul, you want to make some point?
Yeah, just for final comments, one thing, we don't know how the world will look like post-pandemic, but already experts are saying that there can be no going back to business as usual. And, during if you see how the world is responding to the pandemic, the sign is not good in the sense that, for example, when the Italy was in a very bad shape, so we did not see that European Union did not help them in a big way. And later the European Union also acknowledged that, and they say sorry for that. So, what happened in this whole pandemic, we are talking about it's a war or it's a more than that. But if we look back the Second World War, so we know about the Manhattan Project, which was led by the United States, and the UK and Canada was there. And together, they implemented a project to create atomic bomb to kill people, but to rescue people, to save lives in this pandemic, we still cannot see such joint efforts. So I think this joint, what I said before is that collaboration and joint efforts is very, very much needed in this time, in this critical time. So, and to do that, I think mindset change will be very much needed. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So anyone else who wants to make some point or ask some question, or should I conclude? Anyone? Yeah, Gaurab, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just willing to share that, for example, the COVID fund has already been created. So whether it'll be totally used or not used is a different question. So taking this as a start, if the member states can agree to develop that fund into sort of a research-oriented mechanism to set up a regional research mechanism to fighting pandemics and all, or to do more research on the epidemiological factors. So I think that could be a starting point, and this could be built up in that model. So that would be good for the regional everyone. So
thank you.
That could be a starting point. This could be a starting point for that also.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Riaz, you wanted to make some point?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Megha or Satyendra or whoever wants to answer this. Do you think China and India are competing with each other in technological sector? Because Satyendra said that China's technology has some quality problems. So I think India has recently been acquiring or seeking to acquire technology from China, South Korea, and Germany. So do you think there are some, competition or cooperation in this sector between China and India?
Wait, I think you're getting him wrong, because he meant that the testing kits that China is supplying now to all over the world, that is Iran, Turkey, or other places, they're all faulty. The medicines, they're all faulty, and that's what substandard quality. But as far as technology goes, China is way ahead. And
yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Satyen, but the point which Satyen was making was that the equipment, the medical equipment, which has been sent by China, has been found faulty in many regions of Europe and in the West Asia. That was the point he was making.
That was the point.
Yeah. Now I would like to conclude this discussion. Like, every one of you made very important point regarding various things. And one thing which will be very much challenging for this region will be hunger and poverty, because as World Bank has predicted that this will be a very tough time for this region. So I think that integration, especially the trade integration, which was pointed by Khampa, that integration of trade and businesses will really aid, because World Bank has prepared a report in 2013 that the South Asian consumer loses 2 billion. The consumer of this region loses 2 billion due to the trade barriers which is in this region. And so I think that diplomacy should work towards easing the trade barriers, as it will help in fighting the demand deficit due to the economic slowdown. So that will be a very important thing. So to fight hunger and poverty. Another point which was made, very important point made by Ruwanthi was of medical diplomacy. Like we can develop our own Ayurvedic medical diplomacy, especially India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bhutan, who has a history in Ayurvedic diplomacy. They can come to an aid, and this could be a new way of treating because Ayurvedic medicine focuses on building immunity. So this could be a very important point. Another important point which was made by almost everyone is about making a regional supply chain. A regional supply chain will be very much important so that this could help in absorbing the shock, the global shock, either economic or the pandemic kind of shock. And the other point which Megha brought was about technology. The technology will be the answer to everything, I think, in the coming days. So technology will play an important point. So at the end, I would like to thank everyone for coming into this, participating in this discussion and making your valid points. And I look forward to connecting with you all again regarding anything similar on the similar platform and regarding similar to the SAARC thing. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.